The neighborhood of Willow Creek was marketed as a sanctuary of winding cul-de-sacs and weeping willow trees, a place where the world's noise was supposed to fade into the background. For Ethan Cross, a man who had spent 15 years operating in the shadows as a Navy SEAL, it was exactly what he needed. He wanted a place where the only reconnaissance he had to do was checking for toys left in the driveway, and the only missions involved Saturday morning soccer games. But Ethan knew better than most that peace is rarely a permanent state, it is a boundary that must be defended. He didn't expect the threat to come from a woman in a pastel cardigan with a clipboard. Karen Mullery had been the HOA president of Willow Creek for exactly 3 months when she launched her Standards and Security Initiative. Karen viewed herself not as a volunteer administrator, but as a high commander. She didn't just want the grass cut, she wanted the neighborhood to reflect her personal sense of rigid, sterile perfection. To achieve this, she used HOA funds to hire a private firm she called HOA Enforcement, men in black tactical vests and gray polos who patrolled the sidewalks in golf carts, looking for the slightest deviation from the 400-page rulebook. The targeted campaign. Ethan had been a low-profile resident from day one. He kept his lawn pristine, his trash cans were tucked away 3 minutes after the truck passed, and he never missed a payment. However, Ethan's refusal to be intimidated by Karen during a community meeting, where he calmly pointed out that her new patrols were a waste of resident funds, put a target on his back. Karen began a campaign of persistent, petty harassment. First, it was a $50 fine for a non-compliant bicycle left on the porch for 10 minutes. Then, it was a formal warning about unauthorized pavement markings, when Ethan's 7-year-old daughter, Lily, drew a sprawling, colorful sun in sidewalk chalk. Ethan tried to be the diplomat. "Karen, it's chalk," he told her over the fence one afternoon. "It'll be gone with the next rain. It's a kid being a kid." "It's a blight, Mr. Cross," Karen replied, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. "Consistency is the backbone of property value. If I allow your daughter's graffiti, soon we'll have a slum. Rules are rules. My enforcement team will be monitoring your lot closely." The breach of the line. The situation shifted from annoying to dangerous on a bright Tuesday afternoon. Ethan was in the garage, sharpening mower blades, when the familiar whine of a golf cart drifted through the air. Lily was outside on the sidewalk, 20 feet from the driveway, riding her bike. She was wearing her pink helmet and following every rule Ethan had taught her: stay on the right, watch for cars, stop at the corners. One of Karen's enforcement officers, a man named Miller who walked with a swagger that suggested he was a failed recruit for every police academy in the state, pulled his cart onto the curb, blocking Lily's path. Ethan watched from the shadows of the garage, his body instinctively tensing into a state of high readiness. He saw Miller step out of the cart and tower over the 7-year-old. "I told you yesterday, kid," Miller barked, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet afternoon. "No riding on the sidewalk during maintenance hours. You're a repeat offender. Give me the bike. It's being impounded for HOA evidence." Lily gripped her handlebars, her face pale. "My daddy said I can ride here. Please move." Miller didn't move. He reached out and grabbed the handlebars, jerking the bike so hard Lily nearly fell. When she reached out to steady herself, her hand brushed Miller's vest. The man snapped. In an act of cowardly, unchecked aggression, Miller raised his hand and delivered a sharp, open-handed slap across Lily's face. The sound, the sickening crack of skin on skin, echoed off the houses. Lily let out a primal, terrified wail, collapsing to the concrete as Miller stood over her, shouting about assaulting an officer. The interception. He didn't realize it, but Miller had just committed the ultimate tactical error. He had engaged a high-value target in front of a Tier 1 operator. Ethan didn't shout. He didn't run with the frantic energy of a panicked parent. He moved with the terrifying, blurred speed of a predator. One moment Ethan was at his workbench, the next, he was a foot away from Miller. Before Miller could even turn his head, Ethan's hand was a vice around the man's wrist. With a sharp, practiced twist, Ethan applied a compliance hold that forced Miller to his knees. Ethan's other arm was a protective barrier between the guard and his sobbing daughter. "Lily, go inside. Right now," Ethan said. His voice was a low, vibrating growl that sounded less like a man and more like an impending storm. You attacked me." Miller gasped, his face pressed against the side of his golf cart. "I have authority. I'm HOA enforcement." "You're a civilian who just committed a felony," Ethan whispered into his ear. "And you're lucky I'm a man who believes in the system." With his free hand, Ethan dialed 911. "I need police and EMS at 42 Willow Creek. I am an armed homeowner holding a suspect who just assaulted a 7-year-old child. The entire incident is recorded on my Ring, Arlo, and hardwired perimeter cameras. Send a supervisor." The collapse of the kingdom. The arrival of the Willow Creek Police Department was the beginning of the end for Karen Mallory's regime. The lead officer, a veteran sergeant, reviewed the footage on Ethan's tablet. The video was undeniable. It showed Lily riding legally, Miller's aggressive interception, the illegal attempt to seize the bike, and the clear, brutal strike to the child's face. Miller was handcuffed on his knees. As he was being led away, Karen Mallory came power walking down the street, waving her clipboard. "Officer! Release that man immediately," she demanded. "He is an agent of the Willow Creek Association." Mr. Cross's daughter was in violation of community standards and was resisting. "Ma'am, step back," the sergeant said, his voice cold. "Your agent just slapped a 7-year-old girl on camera. He's being charged with felony child abuse, assault of a minor, and criminal impersonation. And if you don't stop interfering, you're going to be in the car right next to him." The investigation didn't stop at the sidewalk. Detectives, spurred by Ethan's insistence and the brutal nature of the video, executed a search warrant on the HOA's digital records. What they found was a treasure trove of criminal intent. Emails from Karen to the security firm surfaced. "I want the Cross family to feel the pressure. Don't be afraid to be physical if the kids don't comply. We need to make an example of them." Another message showed Karen instructed Miller to seize property by any means necessary to force residents into paying fines. The reckoning. The legal fallout was a landslide that buried Karen and her fake police force. Miller, facing a litany of charges including felony child abuse and harassment, realized Karen wouldn't protect him. He accepted a plea deal, testifying that Karen had encouraged the violence and had promised to clean up any legal trouble through her connections. Miller was sentenced to 8 years in state prison and was placed on the permanent child abuse registry, ensuring he would never work in security or near children again. Karen Mallory's downfall was even more public. She was indicted on charges of conspiracy, solicitation of assault, and child endangerment. The court found that she had used her position of authority to orchestrate a campaign of terror. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, ordered to pay $500,000 in civil damages to Ethan's family, and was issued a lifetime ban from serving on any nonprofit or community board. The Willow Creek HOA, faced with massive legal liabilities and the loss of its insurance coverage due to Karen's criminal actions, collapsed entirely. The board resigned, and the enforcement carts were sold at a county auction. The return of peace. 6 months later, the neighborhood felt different. The standards and security signs were gone. The grass grew a little taller in some yards, and the sound of children playing once again filled the air. Ethan Cross sat on his front porch, a cup of coffee in his hand. He watched as Lily, the faint bruise on her cheek long gone, pedaled her bike down the sidewalk. She wasn't looking over her shoulder anymore. She wasn't afraid of the shadows. Ethan knew that the world was still a dangerous place, and that authority without accountability would always try to rear its head. But as he watched his daughter draw a new, even larger sun in chalk on the driveway, he knew that some lines were worth drawing in the sand. The uniform didn't make the man, and the title didn't grant the right to harm the innocent. In Willow Creek, the silence was finally what it was always supposed to be, peaceful.